Oh God. Hey everybody, this is Desert Tested. I'm Jason. That's Leo behind the camera. This is our 2024 Ranger behind me, and if you can't hear it, as is Phoenix tradition, we have a yard crew who is trimming bushes that don't need to be trimmed and blowing around dust that doesn't need to be blown around. But anyway, we're talking about Overland Expo 2025. We went on the hunt for 2024-2025 Ranger stuff, and we didn't find anything. There's good news and bad news. The good news is that there is stuff coming, and there does seem to be a lot on the table. Unfortunately, everybody's been focused on Tacoma and new Toyota Land Cruiser and all that other fun Toyota stuff, because Toyota sells millions of those things, and somehow Toyota became the Glock 19 of the overland off-road world, which isn't fair because it's a hell of a good truck, and people should pay more attention to the Ranger. Maybe the Ranger is the CZ of the off-road area. In any case, I'm sitting in an overpriced camping chair. Let's get this going. Overland Expo itself was pretty good this year. I mean, there was a ton of people, even though from the stats, attendance was down. I think it was down from 29,500 to 28,000 people or attendees, however you want to calculate it. You couldn't really tell because when we went up there for the few hours we went on Saturday, there was a ton of people there, especially towards the middle of the day when we ended up leaving. But again, our main goal was just to hunt down 24 Ranger stuff. So this isn't like a comprehensive Overland Expo review. There's honestly way too many vendors there to even see in probably the 3 days. If you did buy a 3-day pass, I think there were over 420. It does feel like this is a little turning into maybe like Dusty SEMA more than anything else. But, you know, there's a lot of stuff to see if you are interested. So, I mean, the good news is we got to go on a trip to Flagstaff up in May, which is a hell of a good time to be up in Flagstaff, Arizona. The weather was great. Got a little windy towards the middle of the day, but nothing horrible. I don't think anyone's tent or booth ended up blowing away. Some came close, especially some of those guys with the blow-up ones. But we talked to a lot of people, and a lot of them had a lot of good things to say. A lot of them went into detail about their Ranger stuff and their Ranger offerings. We also talked to a few iffy people, and it was kind of interesting, but we'll get into that. Some of the first people we talked to was ARB. They had a pretty awesome booth. Now, of course, they brought a Land Cruiser out with a bunch of ARB stuff on it, which, whatever. But the good news is ARB is bringing a bunch of Ranger stuff to the market, including bumpers, side steps, suspension, all sorts of fun stuff. Apparently, the 24 Ranger is actually really huge down in Australia, so it's just a matter of adapting all the current lineup of ARB stuff to the USDM Ranger, since there are some differences in the frame, surprisingly enough, as you'll see in the interview we did with one of their guys. A lot of their stuff, one thing they did tell us is that the leaf springs on this truck are exactly the same as the 1923 Rangers, which explains why some of the rear ride quality is a little bit iffy, especially if you go over a big bump and it just feels like a dump truck. But so that was good. Fox was also good. Fox had a really impressive booth. Those guys were pretty mum on what they were coming out with for the Ranger, but they are working on stuff, which is good. Again, they have all the access to Ford that they could ever want, so it's kind of weird that they don't have stuff ready right now. Again, Toyota took precedent, which isn't fair to us Ranger guys, but it is what it is. Yeah, they're coming out with their full lineup of 2.0s, 2.5s, whatever else. So Timbren already has stuff out, which is good. We talked to those guys. Very nice dudes. They have both active bump stops and SCS kits. They fit all the way from the active bump stops, fit all the way from the T6 Rangers up to these new trucks. So those things are good to go. And the rear SCS kits are 19 to 25. So you can install those today if you wanted to. Now, you don't have any other suspension to put on with it, but, you know, go figure. I think Eibach finally came out with some 2.0s like this past couple weeks or something. So you can do a set of Eibach 2.0s, which might actually help the rear ride quality a lot on the Rangers. Talked to Nitto a bit. They don't have, again, they're a tire company, so it's all universal. We really went into detail on why they're having kind of two ATs at the same time with the new Terra Grappler the G3 version, so the Gen 3 Terra Grappler's coming out, but they also have the Recon Grappler and how that kind of fits together. They give us some interesting answers, so their logic was good, and they hinted that they're going to do a big redesign on probably the Ridge Grappler, so that would be interesting to see. Also talked to KC Highlights. Those guys are awesome. They have their new Platform 1 system, which while hideously expensive, since it is coming with a massive light bar from KC on it. They do have options for that thing where it doesn't require drilling on some of the Toyota platforms and possibly even hardtop Bronco, which will be nice. Unfortunately for anybody with a regular pickup that doesn't have integrated roof rails, and I don't know why Ford keeps doing that because the overseas trucks have them, but who asked me? Ford is going to do Ford things. Onward Supply Co. was somebody we were just introduced to. They have universal backrests that aren't quite molly, aren't quite Velcro. They're kind of like a combination of things, but they were pretty neat. They are a little bit on the pricey side if you do get the entire thing. The panels themselves are fairly inexpensive, which is pretty nice. But unfortunately, everything was out of stock when I went and actually tried to buy something for this truck because God help me, the storage in this thing is horrible. But so if you do want a good storage solution, those guys might actually be a good place to look. Their system for mounting all the bags and stuff is actually really interesting and good. Talked to Cobb Tuning. The Cobb lady was super nice, even though she was not super happy that we whipped out a camera face. She was like, sneaky guys. But hey, she did better than most of the people we talked to. But in any case, Cobb is coming out with tuning for the Toyotas, which is long overdue. The 3.5 and 4.0 Tacomas last gen, a couple generations, were super underserved in the tuning department, which made there were like a couple of random custom tuner guys and they were overcharging immensely. Their tunes weren't even that great. And it's kind of sad that none of the major tuning companies really jumped into those trucks. Even if you don't get the power, just having the competition in there to keep the prices down for, regular folks, always a good thing. So Cobb's jumping into that. And then afterwards, they are working on Ranger stuff. They apparently have a Raptor 3.0 intercooler out. They don't have a lot of hard parts out for 2.3 or 2.7 trucks yet. So, well, I'm sure that stuff is coming. It's just going to take time. Talked to Bill Stein. Bill Stein is 6 months out on basically all the Ranger stuff, which is a little heartbreaking and weird. Yeah, and I don't understand. I can understand why you wanted to focus on Tacoma because those were going to sell like hotcakes, but to not do anything else for basically any other truck that's perfectly capable, and let's face it, Tacomas are basically 19 to 23 Rangers that kind of look like Michael Bay Transformers, since everything is just a high gear count transmission paired with a Turbo 4. Now, Tacomas do have the hybrid option, which is nice, but Ford led the way. All you guys are posers. Talked to K&N, their booth was really nice, and they gave my kid a little toy truck, which was cute. They have their next gen intake coming out for the Rangers. I think it's actually available now. It wasn't available when we first talked to them, but on the market. I mean, it's an intake, so take it as what you will. It is interesting that it looks very air raid, that next gen intake, so I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen to air raid here in the next year to 2 years. We might finally see that sad husk of what air raid used to be go away finally, but I'm not looking forward to it because I really did like those guys, especially when they were independent and in Phoenix. Fellow Arizonans, always support your fellow Arizonans. Talked to Rigid. Rigid has light mounts coming out for the Ranger. They're doing an A-pillar, which I believe is already out, and they're working on fog buckets, which will be actually interesting to put in here because the one complaint I have about this guy is that the fogs are halogen, which is annoying because the headlights are LED and the color temperature difference really bothers me because I'm very autistic and OCD like that. But they have all that coming out. Something interesting they did say is that they're not going to be supporting anything over 5 years old, so my 11 F-150 is going to be even more sad and neglected than it already is by the performance aftermarket. So if you have an older truck, Rigid might not be your best option anymore, which kind of sucks. We also talked a little bit about them moving away from the classic light bar, and it's not to say that the E-Series and SR Series are going to go anywhere. They're not. They're staying around and probably going to stay around for a while because they were on a lot of trucks at the expo. But Rigid Rose and showcasing them, they were showcasing more of their round lights or some of their other style of light bars. So kind of interesting how they're even Rigid is kind of moving away from that Rigid styling. Now, granted, a lot of popularity of Rigid was because they weren't enforcing their map, so you're getting really powerful light bars, cheaper than basically everybody else in the market because everyone was just like whoring those things out. But now Rigid has a map policy, so it's kind of interesting that you see KC and Baja Designs selling a lot more and being on a lot more trucks than Rigid at this point. Talked to AFE. AFE had a lot of Ranger stuff. They're going hard into some of the more off-road things with like rock rails, which aren't really rock rails, and they're going to be pinch weld mount instead of frame mount, and they're still calling them rock rails. If you are a manufacturer, please stop doing that. please. I know Lund did it. I have the Lund rock rails on my F-150 because they're pretty low profile and neat. They're not rock rails. They don't bolt to the frame. They can't handle the full weight of the truck. That's not a rock rail. That's just a bar, step bar, something. I don't know. It's almost as if we need this society of automotive engineers to clarify things and make up terms, but apparently they just don't care that manufacturers are call things things when there aren't those things because reasons. Whatever. But anyway, AFE seems to still trying to do this omni manufacturer where they want to sell basically everything and make a little bit of everything, which good luck. Let's see, who else did we talk to? Onward. I didn't get a chance to talk to Deck. Deck did have a pretty neat booth there. They were busy talking to people who were actually going to buy things, so we didn't have a chance to actually say anything to those guys. But they had their new top-mounted bed slide is really interesting because as much as I love Deck systems, and I think they're like awesome pieces of aftermarket tech, I would not ever put one on my truck because it eats way too much bed space, especially in like a Ranger or a 5.5 bed F-150. But there's a use case for them, and I think some of the stuff that Deck is coming out with, that bed drawer top thing, is really awesome. They also have some new bolt-on tie-down rings that you can stick onto those, stick onto the top of the deck. Is the big issue with older deck systems is that you put that in a truck and you lose all your cleats. So, and they had the Trax rails, which had you can put eyelets in. We did that on one of Stage 3's trucks, the hunting truck build, for tie-down support. But yeah, so Deck is coming out with some neat stuff. Make it a little bit more cargo capacity, a little bit more handiness out of their systems. While you are losing bed space for the drawers, you're at least gaining something too. Great, we didn't talk about pricing. I'm sure this stuff is hideously expensive, but that's just how it goes. Things that weren't so good. We talked to King. King's booth was not great. And I'm not trying to rag on any of the guys there. They just kind of get sent there by King itself. But I mean, King showed up with basically just a merch stand. I didn't see a single shock there the entire time. We asked them about 24 Ranger stuff because on their website, at least as of Overland Expo and this recording, they're saying that their coilovers and rear shocks fit 19 to 24 Ranger, which makes no sense to me or anybody else because I did ask some of those other aftermarket companies off camera about what the deal was, and they're like, we don't know because that truck changed a lot. So I mean, it's based on an entirely new platform that shares platform with Bronco instead of old T6. The front suspension did change with the new sway bar link setup, but the rear suspension's different with the shocks now inboard. And King really didn't give us a good answer. They're like, well, we're not sure we had a truck in. And it's like, well, your site says this. Well, you know, we test stuff and make it better. I'm like, okay, cool story, bro. If I were you guys, I would not be putting King 2.5s on my 24 Ranger because I have a feeling that fitment is going to get updated soon, and you probably just don't want to trust that at the moment. So, also talked to Willwood. They're coming out with their new Aero 6 systems, which use the factory spindle, which is good. And because that allows you to have a little bit more wheel clearance options. Sorry, not tire, wheel clearance options. Unfortunately, they didn't give us very good info either because while they're more compact, there's still some offsets and weirdness that could go on. Like I said, Saturday in Phoenix, every yard crew in the world is out here today. Even with a more compact 6-piston caliper on the stock spindle, you still have some wheel offsets and backspacing that's not going to work, some wheel designs that aren't going to work, and they really didn't give us a good answer. You know, you can always download and print out their template and do some measuring and hope you get it right, but you're also buying a $1,800 brake kit, and if you think you're right and you put that thing on your truck and you're wrong, you have a $1,800 paperweight because most companies aren't going to be taking that thing back. So you asked them about that, and you know, it's been a problem with Willwood for a while because their TX6R, TX, whatever their original heavy-duty military grade 6-piston brake kits for the trucks came out, they had a very narrow scope what wheels would actually fit on those things, and they were never very specific on what that was, which probably actually hurt sales on those things. So I hope Willwood does a little bit more testing on their own and gives guys, you know, a lot more just solid information. You know, having to download a template or ask a guy over the phone who may or may not know is pretty weird. Yeah, I don't know. maybe they expect us to do it. I don't know if they're actually coming out with an Aero 6 for the Ranger. Ranger's brakes actually probably could use an upgrade. I don't know if it's going to need a 6-piston brake kit, but since the brakes are a little bit inconsistent in this thing, I think some of that has to do with the automatic braking feature, and I just haven't turned off all the settings. But yeah, weird hit or miss stuff. So if you are a manufacturer, just, I don't know, look out for the consumer a little bit more. I think it's great that you're throwing out good product, but if you're not going to give much guidance, how are you going to sell the thing? Other than that, Overland Expo, it was fine. Like I said, I think overlanding is not going anywhere anytime soon. That could be a good or bad thing as I sit in this overpriced camping chair pondering my life decisions. But like, we had a good time, saw some cool stuff. There was a lot of good builds up there. Unfortunately, I think overall most of it was Toyota. There just wasn't a lot of variety, I think, overall in the expo as far as truck builds. You know, how many Tacomas with suspension, bumper, bed rack, and RTT on it can you see before you've seen basically every single iteration? And this is, what, year 8 or 9 of this thing, and it's pretty much been the same thing since. So it would be nice to see a little bit more variety. We saw a couple of Rangers, mostly Ranger Raptors. There were a couple of first-gen Raptors, third-gen Raptors, a couple of Colorado and Canyon builds, 1 or 2 Rams, and like, I think I saw 1 Silverado. There might have been another one that I can't remember, but a lot of Jeeps, actually. So it was mostly a Jeep and Tacoma Fest, which I think is unfortunate because there's a lot of good trucks out there these days. The mid-size truck market especially has a lot of good options. Granted, most of the trucks are high gear count automatic transmissions with turbocharged 4-cylinder engines that make really good torque, including this little guy right here who has done very well off-road for us, bone stock. So we're pretty excited to get aftermarket things on it. Unfortunately, those aftermarket things are a ways out. So if you're a Ranger fan, sorry, hang in there. It'll happen. If you do want to check out our full video, our full walk around of interviewing brands and whatever else, we have a full video up on our YouTube channel that is the Hunting for 2024 Ranger Parts at Overland Expo 2025. This year is our retrospective as we contemplate why. In any case, we'll catch you guys next time. Check out another video. Head to our website. Go find us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Substack, and Medium. So we have blogs and all sorts of other fun stuff up there. So, and merch soon, hopefully, once Glendale approves our business license. Yay. We'll catch you guys later.